"Get off my property." That's the first thing the HOA president said to me when I got home from deployment. 18 months in Iraq, and I came back to find 3 luxury villas standing where my grandfather's cabin used to be, each one sparkling white lined with palm trees and sitting squarely on my land. My name was on every deed, every permit, every rental agreement, except I'd never signed a single one of them. If you've ever felt the system was built to crush you, stick around. Because what happened next, it almost did. The drive from the airport felt longer than I remembered. I'd been counting the miles home since the day I left. But when I turned onto the dirt road leading to the lake, I slammed the brakes. A massive iron gate blocked the path 10 feet high with a polished sign that read Lake Vista HOA, private property. My GPS said I was at the right place. So why did my family's land now belong to an HOA? A security guard walked up Kyle. His badge said mid-50s, the kind of guy who looked at you like he'd already decided you didn't belong there. I told him this was my property inherited from my grandfather and I'd been deployed overseas. His face didn't move an inch. He said flatly, "You're mistaken, sir. This land belongs to the Lake Vista HOA. If you don't leave, I'll call the police." Before I could answer, a black Lexus SUV rolled up. Out stepped a woman straight out of a country club catalog. Perfect hair, designer sunglasses, and air of authority that screamed control freak. She introduced herself as Gwendolyn Ashford, HOA president. She smiled like she was already bored with me. I explained everything: my grandfather's will, my deployment, the taxes I'd paid before leaving. She opened a leather folder and pulled out a deed. Lake Vista HOA, it said. Dated June 15th, 2023. With my name, my signature notarized. Then she flipped to a page of rental contracts through Airbnb, all signed by me. My throat tightened. I hadn't signed anything. I told her I'd been in Iraq the entire month of June. She shrugged, said, "Then I suppose that's a matter for the courts. For now, you're trespassing." When I pulled out my phone to photograph the documents, she yanked them back. The guard stepped closer, his hand hovering near his radio. I backed off, my heart pounding. Behind her, a shiny billboard caught my eye. Lake Vista Villas, managed by Fletcher Properties, LLC. My name turned into a brand for their scam. That night, sitting in a cheap motel, I called my sister Bryn. She's a civil lawyer, tough as nails. I told her what happened. Silence, then fury. She said if they forged my signature, that was felony fraud. "We'll get the deed, we'll prove it," she promised. The next morning, she showed up in person, dark circles under her eyes. We drove to the county office, and sure enough, the deed transfer existed, notarized, neat and fake. The notary's name was Willa Beaumont. The witness, Sterling Radcliffe, a former county employee. My blood ran cold. That name. He'd been the guy who asked me to sign a lake survey in 2022. That's where they'd stolen my signature. It wasn't a mistake. It was a coordinated hit. We brought everything to the HOA office. Gwendolyn was waiting along with Sterling and another board member, Francine Gable, who sat with a tablet like a shield. The meeting room was sterile, reeking of fake civility. I spread my documents across the table. My grandfather's will, tax receipts, deployment orders, proof this land was mine. "You forged my signature," I said. "You stole my property." Gwendolyn barely looked down. "You signed the deed transfer June 15th, 2023. It was fair market value. You must be confused. Deployment trauma does that." I clenched my fists. "I was overseas on June 15th. You can check the Department of Defense stamps yourself." Sterling leaned back. "Then take it up with the notary. We're done here." We stood to leave. As I turned, Gwendolyn muttered to Sterling, "Check if he's hired a lawyer. Tell Waverly immediately." That name stuck with me. Waverly. A quick search later revealed Judge Conrad Waverly, County Circuit Judge, former attorney for Lake Vista Development, LLC. The same parent company behind the HOA. My stomach dropped. They had the courts, too. Bryn and I knew this was bigger than a land grab. It was organized corruption. So we brought in an investigator, a friend of mine. Holden Merrick, ex-NYPD detective. Within days, he traced everything shell companies in Nevada, fake email accounts created in my name metadata showing the forged deed had been edited using Adobe Acrobat Pro, 5 days before the supposed sale. Holden found the notary 2 Willa Beaumont. She'd vanished after the forgery, hiding in Mexico. When we reached her, she broke down crying. Sterling had paid her $50,000 cash and erased a personal debt if she'd stamped the fake deed. She thought it was harmless until she realized what she'd done. She sent us screenshots of texts, photos of the cash receipts. Proof. We took everything to the sheriff's office. The sergeant skimmed the papers, unimpressed. Sounds like a civil matter, he said. Take it to court. Bryn's voice shook with rage. Forgery is a felony, Sergeant. You're refusing to act. He just leaned back. Be careful with accusations, ma'am. False reporting's a crime, too. Walking out of that building, I felt hollow. For a moment, I thought maybe they were right. Maybe I was crazy to think I could fight this. I was just one guy. They had lawyers, judges, money. I almost gave up right there. But Bryn grabbed my shoulder. They built a trap, she said. But they picked the wrong soldier. That snapped me out of it. I'd fought worse enemies than paper pushers. We took it federal. The FBI assigned Agent Geneva Caldwell, who specialized in public corruption. She said, follow the money. So our forensic tech did. He uncovered $2.1 million in rental income funneled through 3 shell companies to an offshore trust in the Cayman Islands. The beneficiaries: Gwendolyn Ashford, Sterling Radcliffe, and Margot Waverly, the judge's wife. It was money laundering, plain and simple. The FBI agreed to investigate, but they needed one last piece proof of intent. That's when Holden volunteered for an undercover sting. He posed as a wealthy investor eager to partner with the HOA. The meeting took place at a coffee shop downtown. I waited in a surveillance van with Agent Caldwell listening through the wire. Holden asked how she'd managed to secure such prime lakefront property. Gwendolyn laughed softly and said, You just have to be creative with documentation. As long as it's filed correctly, no one asks questions. Holden pressed, and the previous owners, she waved a manicured hand. They make noise, sure, but we make sure their signatures on every document. The courts always side with us. When she added Judge Waverly's been very cooperative, Caldwell mouthed, Got her. A week later, the FBI moved in. Lake Vista HOA's annual meeting was packed over 100 residents listening to Gwendolyn brag about expansion plans. I watched through the window as she said, Some disgruntled individual tried to stop us with false accusations, but justice prevailed. Then the doors opened. 10 FBI agents walked in. Caldwell at the front. Gwendolyn Ashford and Sterling Radcliffe, you are under arrest for fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. The room exploded in gasps. Sterling tried to run, 2 agents tackled him. Gwendolyn shouted, This is a setup. I did everything legally. Caldwell read her rights as cameras flashed. Then she announced to the crowd that the 3 villas had been built illegally using forged documents, and that the true owner, me, was standing right outside. People turned, staring through the glass. I stepped inside as Caldwell said, This man's property was stolen under his name. Effective immediately, it's returned to him. Some residents looked guilty, others apologized. A few still defended her, but I didn't care. The war was over. The FBI raided their offices the same day. Judge Waverly and his wife were arrested for corruption and money laundering. The HOA's lawyer lost his license. The sheriff who refused to act was suspended pending investigation. At the federal trial months later, every piece of evidence hit like artillery fire. The forged signatures, metadata. Bank records, Gwendolyn's own confession caught on tape. The jury didn't even deliberate long. Guilty on all counts. Gwendolyn got 15 years. Sterling 12, Waverly 10, his wife 8, the HOA's attorney 6, and permanent disbarment. When the judge banged the gavel, I didn't cheer. I just breathed. Afterward, I stood at the lake's edge looking at the empty villas behind the yellow tape. The air felt clean again. Quiet. Real. They'd stolen my land, my name, my peace, but not my resolve. And if there's one thing I learned through all of this, it's that justice isn't a gift. It's a fight. And if you stand your ground long enough, it will come. Judge Miller read the document, then looked over her glasses. "Counselor," she said to Karen's attorney, "are you arguing that a 1988 covenant can erase an 1895 recorded property right? Because that would be, how shall I put it? Fictional." The courtroom snickered. Then the hammer dropped. The judge nullified the lien, fined the HOA $50,000 for mismanagement, fined Karen personally $10,000 for filing fraudulent documents, and this was the best part: removed her and the entire board from office, appointing a neutral receiver until new elections. Karen just stood there, pale, trembling. When we passed her on the way out, she wouldn't meet my eye. I didn't feel triumphant, just finished, like something heavy had finally been set down. They tried to take everything: our home, our peace, our dignity. And in the end, they lost it all to a single truth buried under an oak tree. Never let anyone tell you ownership is just paperwork. Sometimes it's history. And history, when you dig deep enough, wins every time.